You've tried, you've built the routine, you've kept the streak for a while. Then something breaks, and you're back where you started. And the worst part, you don't know why. Here's what the research on cognitive schemas tells us, and what no discipline guru will say out loud. Your habits are not failing because you're weak. They're failing because they're running on top of a self-image that was locked in before you were 10 years old. That identity is older than your ambition, stronger than your willpower, and completely invisible until it isn't. You don't have a discipline problem. You have a loyalty problem. You are loyal to a man you never agreed to become. In this video, where that identity came from, why Stoicism alone cannot touch it, and the one interrogation Epictetus designed that most Stoics never turn on themselves. Point 1. The installed identity. Let's start with the fact that most people in this space will not say, because it doesn't sell courses and it doesn't make you feel good. By the time you were 10 years old, your brain had already decided what kind of man you were. Not suggested, not proposed, decided. Psychologist Aaron Beck, the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy, spent decades mapping what he called cognitive schemas, mental blueprints. Structures the mind builds in early childhood from repeated experience, that then function as filters through which all future experience is processed. Not consciously, not with your permission, automatically. Schema doesn't ask you what you think. It tells you what is real. Here's how it gets built. A child is criticized repeatedly by a father who expects more. Or he fails publicly, a sport, a test, a moment in front of people, and the humiliation attaches itself to a belief. I am the kind of person things don't work out for. Or he grows up in chaos, so he learns to manage everything and everyone, and slowly a role solidifies into an identity. I am responsible for holding this together. Or something darker, he has a temper, or a force, or an energy that frightens the people around him, so it gets suppressed, locked down. And the rule becomes, if I let go, something bad happens. These are not metaphors. These are the 4 most common installed identities among men who are drawn to self-mastery content. Let me name them plainly. The first is the not enough identity. This is the man who has a quiet, constant hum of inadequacy beneath everything he does. He achieves, but the achievement never lands. He succeeds, but the feeling passes too quickly. He is always moving because stopping means confronting the silence, and in the silence the voice says, not enough. The second is the invisible man identity. This is the man who learned early that his presence was not wanted, or not valued, or not safe. He became a ghost by design. He does not take up space. He does not make demands. He is capable, deeply capable, but he keeps that capability hidden behind performance and self-erasure. He is excellent at helping others become visible. He struggles to believe he deserves to be seen. The third is the responsible one identity. This is the man who is the load bearer, the anchor, the one who doesn't break because breaking is not something he is permitted to do. He became responsible at an age when he should have been reckless. He learned to treat his own needs as secondary, not from nobility but from fear. Fear of what happens when no one holds it together. The fourth is the dangerous if I let loose identity. This is the man who has learned to distrust himself. There is a force in him, rage, appetite, ambition, something unnamed, that he has been taught is destructive. So he keeps himself small, controlled. He mistakes the cage for virtue. He calls his suppression discipline. Sit with that for a moment. One of those 4 is probably operating in you right now. Not as a thought you're having, as an atmosphere you live inside. And here is the pattern interrupt, the thing that changes the frame of this entire conversation. Asterisk, the man who wakes at 5 a.m. every day to prove something to a father who died 10 years ago is not disciplined. He is haunted. Discipline that originates from an installed identity is not freedom. It is a more sophisticated form of the original prison. Here is how to recognize which identity is running your life. Not through therapy, not through years of reflection, but through one simple observation. Watch where your discipline breaks down. Not when, where, what type of situation is it? What is the emotional quality of the moment just before you quit? The not enough man tends to collapse at the point of visibility. He is disciplined in private. He trains, he reads, he prepares. But the moment success requires him to be seen, to publish the work, to make the ask, to step forward, something stops him. He says he isn't ready, he believes it. The invisible man collapses when the work is good enough to claim. He will help you with your project. He will not build his own. The responsible one collapses under resentment. He burns out not because the load is too heavy, but because he cannot ask for help without feeling like a failure. He does not rest. He does not recover. He runs until he breaks, and then he calls it weakness. The dangerous, if I let loose man collapses when full commitment is required. He gives 70%, enough to be competent, not enough to be fully exposed. Because if he commits completely and fails, that confirms the fear. And if he commits completely and succeeds, the force he's been suppressing has to come out. Both terrify him. Look at your collapse points. They are not random. They form a pattern. And the pattern has a signature. Why does this matter? Because every tool you pick up to improve yourself, every book, every system, every practice, gets filtered through this identity before it reaches your behavior. This is why the man with the not enough schema can read the same Stoic philosophy as a man without it, and come away using it to punish himself rather than liberate himself. The philosophy doesn't change. The filter changes everything. This is why habits built on willpower alone collapse. Willpower is the energy you spend fighting the identity's gravitational pull. The moment you are tired or stressed or uncertain, the pull wins every time. James Clear's Atomic Habits says that behavior change must begin with identity change. He's right, but he doesn't go far enough back. The identity you need to change is not the one you're trying to build. It's the one that was built for you, the one running below the system you're trying to install on top of it. The installed identity is not a habit. It cannot be replaced by building a new habit. It has to be found, named and tried, the way you try a case in court. Which brings us to the next layer of this problem. Because you might be thinking, I have Stoicism, I have the tools, I can apply them to this. And that's exactly where the next trap is waiting. If you're still with me, and you recognize your identity in what I just described, drop one word in the comments. Just one. The name of the identity you think is running you. Not enough, invisible, responsible, dangerous. That's it, no explanation needed. Let's see how many men in this community are fighting the same prisoner. Point 2. Why Stoic practice alone cannot fix this. Here is the argument most Stoicism channels will never make, because it requires them to critique the very product they are selling. Stoic practice, journaling, negative visualization, the morning reflection, voluntary hardship, is a powerful cognitive tool, but it is being applied at the wrong level. Most men who study Stoicism apply it to their circumstances, to their reactions, to their external life. They use the dichotomy of control to manage responses to events that happen outside them. Rejection, loss, failure, other people's behavior. And that is legitimate, that is useful. But there is a reading of Epictetus that most people completely miss. In the Discourses Book 1, Epictetus is not primarily talking about events. He is talking about judgments. The Greek word is krisis, the act of judging, of evaluating, of forming an impression. His argument at its deepest level is this: what enslaves a man is not what happens to him. What enslaves him is the impression, the fantasia, that he accepts as true about himself. The dichotomy of control, applied properly, is not just I cannot control external events. It is, I can examine and refuse the internal judgments I have accepted as reality, and the installed identity is a judgment. It is a conclusion your mind drew at age 8 or 9 from insufficient data. In circumstances you had no power to design, using a brain that was not yet capable of critical evaluation, and then it filed that conclusion as fact. Most Stoic practice never touches this. It builds discipline on top of an unexamined judgment. It builds the house on the rotten foundation and is surprised when the walls crack. Consider Marcus Aurelius. He was arguably the most powerful man in the known world. He commanded legions, governed an empire, held absolute authority over millions of lives. And yet, if you read the Meditations carefully, not for the quotable lines, but for the texture of the man writing them, you find something that almost no one talks about. He struggled with inadequacy. Book 2. Begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with meddling, ungrateful, violent, treacherous, envious, uncharitable men. This is a man steeling himself daily, not from a position of natural calm, from a position of genuine internal battle. Book 5. In the morning when thou risest unwillingly, let this thought be present. I am rising to the work of a human being, unwillingly. The Emperor of Rome, writing to himself about the difficulty of getting out of bed. The installed identity spares no one. Power does not dissolve it. Status does not dissolve it. Even a lifetime of deliberate philosophical practice does not fully dissolve it for Marcus. What he did, what made him extraordinary, was that he turned the examination inward. He used the Meditations not as a journal of his victories, but as a court of internal inquiry. He questioned his own impressions. He challenged his own conclusions. He treated his inner world with the same forensic seriousness a general would treat enemy intelligence. Most men who read Marcus take his conclusions and make them mottos. They do not replicate the process that produced the conclusions. The process is the practice, and the process requires you to turn the dichotomy of control onto your self-concept, not just your circumstances. Ask yourself, when was the last time you questioned the judgment your mind holds about what kind of man you are? Not your habits, not your circumstances. The core verdict your identity has already rendered about your capacity, your worth, your right to occupy space. If you cannot remember the last time you did that, or if the question feels uncomfortable in a way you'd rather not examine, that discomfort is data. Here is the principle that holds this point together. Asterisks. Stoicism without identity work is rearranging furniture in a burning house. You can become excellent at Stoic practice. You can journal every morning, practice negative visualization with precision, embrace voluntary hardship, control your reactions with increasing skill, and your discipline will still collapse at the exact point where the installed identity is threatened. Because the installed identity is not a reaction, it is not a circumstance. It is the lens through which all your Stoic observations are made. If the lens is cracked, the observations are distorted from the start. This is not a critique of Stoicism. Epictetus himself provides the solution, but it requires reading him at full depth, not at motivational poster depth. The Stoic practice most men are doing is genuine, it is valuable, but it is incomplete because it is external facing. It examines what happens to the man. It does not examine the man who is doing the examining. That is where Machiavelli enters the picture, and I mean that literally. Pause here for a moment. Not to like the video, not to subscribe. I want you to do something that will cost you 30 seconds and might change in the next 10 years. Ask yourself this: is my Stoic practice making me free, or is it making me more disciplined inside that same prison? If you can feel the difference between those two things, type "I see it now" in the comments. That one question is the hinge point of this entire video. Everything that comes next depends on whether you're willing to answer it honestly. Point 3. The Machiavellian lens on self-concept. Niccolo Machiavelli is misread by almost everyone. The popular reading of The Prince is that it is a manual for ruthlessness, a guide to getting what you want by any means necessary. That reading is superficial, and it misses what Machiavelli was actually most concerned with. In chapter 23, a chapter most people skip, Machiavelli turns his attention from enemies and alliances to something he considers far more dangerous to a ruler than any external threat. He calls it the problem of the court. A ruler, Machiavelli argues, is surrounded by advisors, ministers, and counselors who constantly feed him narratives about himself and his kingdom. Most of these narratives serve the interests of the narrator, not the ruler. They flatter. They limit. They frame the ruler's understanding of what is possible, what is permitted, what is true about his own power. The court tells the ruler who he is, and the ruler, over time, comes to believe it. Machiavelli's warning: the most dangerous threat to a ruler is not the enemy at the gate. It is the corrupt court whispering in his ear. Now apply this to the internal world of a man. Your installed identity is a court. It has been operating since you were a child. It has ministers, the memory of your father's voice, the impression left by a public failure, the role the family assigned to you. Each of them whispers a constant narrative. Each of them frames what you are permitted to attempt, to claim, to become. And you have been ruling from inside that court for decades, largely without questioning the counsel you are receiving. This is not a psychological metaphor. This is a structural description of how the mind operates. The self-concept functions as the sovereign narrative, the story the court has agreed upon. It filters every new experience through that story. Evidence that confirms the narrative gets amplified. Evidence that contradicts it gets dismissed. This is why a man with the not enough identity can be told he is excellent at something by 5 people and doubt all 5 of them, but be criticized by 1 person and believe that instantly. The court has already decided what is true. Individual data points don't change the verdict. They get reinterpreted to fit it. Here is where dark psychology becomes relevant, but not in the way this topic is usually discussed on channels like this one. Dark psychology in most content is taught as a tool for reading and influencing other people. Understanding manipulation, social frames, covert persuasion, these are the standard curriculum. But the most sophisticated application of dark psychology is inward. A covert social frame works like this. It establishes a set of unstated assumptions that govern how reality is interpreted, without ever naming those assumptions directly. Once a frame is operating, every action taken inside it reinforces the frame. The frame is invisible as long as no one names it. The moment it is named, it loses power. Your installed identity operates as a covert frame. It does not announce itself. It does not say, "I am the not enough schemer, and I am about to prevent you from submitting this work because visibility feels dangerous to me." It simply creates a feeling, vague, sourceless, convincing, that this isn't the right time, that you need more preparation, that something is missing. And you follow the feeling without questioning it, because the feeling feels like you. It is not you. It is the court. The court is not you. Machiavelli's prescription for a ruler trapped in a corrupt court is surgical. He does not say, "Storm out and dismiss everyone." He says, first, you must understand which narratives are serving you and which are serving the narrator. Then you must learn to observe the court from outside its own frame. Only then do you have the clarity to act with genuine sovereignty. The parallel is direct. You cannot fight the installed identity by attacking your behavior. The behavior is the court's output, not the court itself. You need to find the court, name its ministers, understand what each one is protecting, and then, from that position of clarity, begin to govern yourself by your own verdict, not theirs. This is the Machiavellian practice applied inward. It is not comfortable, it is not warm, but it is precise, and precision is what this requires. Epictetus understood this, which is why he taught his students to examine every impression before accepting it. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. The sequence matters. Identity before behavior, always. The man who tries to discipline his way to a new identity is starting at the wrong end of the chain. You must first ask, who is doing the disciplining? And who decided that man was the one in charge? This is where the 3 threads of this video, psychology, Stoicism, and Machiavellian strategy, converge on a single point. The installed identity is a cognitive schema. That is the psychological name for it. It is an unexamined fantasia, an impression accepted as fact. That is the Stoic name for it. It is a corrupt court narrative, operating below the level of the sovereign's awareness. That is the Machiavellian name for it. 3 traditions, 3 different languages, 1 phenomenon. And all 3 traditions point to the same first move. You cannot fight what you have not named. Before strategy, before practice, before any behavioral change, you need reconnaissance. The Stoics' first war is always internal. And the general who goes to war without mapping the terrain is not brave. He is reckless, and he will lose. The next section is the map. Before I give you the audit, and I am going to give you something specific and actionable, not philosophy, I want to ask you something. How long have you been building discipline on top of a foundation you've never looked at? A year? 5 years? A decade? Whatever the answer is, it's not wasted time. It brought you to this exact point. But what happens after this video is entirely your choice. The audit is 3 steps. It takes 20 minutes. And it has the potential to do more than the last 5 years of habit building combined. Here it is. Point 4, the identity audit. This is not a journaling exercise. I want to be precise about that, because if you frame this as journaling, your mind will treat it as journaling. Reflective, gentle, non-threatening. It will produce pleasant observations that change nothing. This is an interrogation. You are not sitting down to explore your feelings. You are sitting down to interrogate a prisoner who has been running your life without your authorization. The prisoner is the installed identity. Your job is not to understand it sympathetically. Your job is to get a confession. Interrogators do not begin with compassion. They begin with clarity about what they are looking for. They know the shape of the confession before they hear it. They are not surprised by evasions, they expect them. And they know that the most powerful moment in any interrogation is the moment the subject stops pretending. You are looking for one thing, the sentence. The core verdict the installed identity holds about what kind of man you are. When you find it, you will know it. Not because it is dramatic or surprising, because it feels completely obvious, like something you have always known and never said out loud. 3 steps. Do not skip any of them. Do not reorder them. The sequence is the method. Step 1. Name the recurring collapse pattern. Think back across the last 12 months. Not your achievements, your collapses. The moments your discipline broke. The times you quit, retreated, avoided, numbed, or simply stopped. Do not list them chronologically. Look for the pattern underneath them. What do these moments have in common? Not the surface content. Not I stopped going to the gym and I didn't finish the project. Look deeper. What was the type of the situation? Was it always a moment of visibility, of vulnerability, of commitment that felt total and irreversible, of being seen as someone who needed help? The pattern is the identity's signature. The installed identity does not collapse randomly. It collapses at the specific points where its core verdict would be challenged or confirmed. It has a consistent fingerprint. Find it. Write it down in 1 sentence, not a paragraph. 1 sentence. Step 2. Trace the emotion beneath the collapse. Once you have the pattern, go back to one specific instance, the clearest example you can remember, and do not think about what you did. Think about what you felt in the 30 seconds before you did it, not the emotion that came after, the shame, the justification, the rationalizing. The emotion that came before, the one that was already present when you made the decision to retreat. This emotion is the installed identity speaking. It is older than the situation. It arrived too quickly and too certainly to have been caused by the specific moment. It has that quality of recognition, the feeling that this was always going to happen. Like a familiar room you keep waking up in, name the emotion as precisely as you can. Not just fear. Fear of what specifically? Not just inadequacy. Inadequacy in front of whom? The more specific the name, the closer you are to the court. Step 3. Find the sentence. This is the confession. Say this out loud, not in your head, out loud, and complete it without editing yourself. Of course I can't do this, because I am the kind of person who, do not overthink it. Do not reach for the intelligent answer. Say the first thing that arrives. That sentence is the installed identity speaking in its own voice. It is the court's standing verdict on your case. It will probably feel embarrassing, small, like something you would never admit to another person. That smallness is the tell. The installed identity survives by being beneath the level of conscious examination. The moment you say it out loud, the moment you hear it in the air rather than inside your own mind, something shifts. An identity that can be named can be examined. An identity that can be examined can be tried. An identity that can be tried can be found wanting. And an identity that has been found wanting, honestly, clearly, in the cold light of adult reason rather than childhood necessity, no longer has the authority it once had. This is not the end. but it is the beginning. The Stoics' first war is always internal reconnaissance. You have now drawn the first map. Here is why the sequence matters. Most self-improvement work starts at step 3, the behavior. Build a new habit, change your actions, become the man who does the thing. This works for approximately 11 to 30 days, which is exactly as long as willpower can outrun the installed identity's gravitational pull. And then the collapse comes. And the man who collapsed tells himself, "I lack discipline," and the installed identity files as further evidence for its verdict, and the cycle tightens. What you have done in these 3 steps is different in kind, not in degree. You have not tried to override the identity. You have surfaced it. And there is a principle in both Stoic philosophy and in modern schema therapy that holds consistently. An impression that is seen clearly, named precisely, and examined without flinching, loses a portion of its authority every time it is examined, not all at once, gradually. The way daylight changes the quality of a room. You are not going to walk out of this video a different man. That is not how this works. That is not how anything real works. What you are going to do is begin the reconnaissance. Regularly, the way Marcus Aurelius sat with his meditations every morning, not as a ritual, not as productivity, but as internal forensics. Finding the impressions that are distorting his judgment, naming them, refusing to let them govern without examination. This is the practice. This is what the discipline is actually in service of. Not the habit, not the streak, not the 5 a.m. alarm, the sovereignty. A man who governs himself from an examined identity is not more disciplined than other men. He is more accurate. His actions originate from a verdict he has chosen, rather than one that was handed to him. And that difference between chosen and inherited sovereignty is the entire argument of this video. Every sentence of it was pointed at this. 3 things to leave with. Your discipline isn't broken. It's aimed at the wrong target. Stoicism practiced at the behavioral level, without examining the identity beneath it, is effort without foundation. And the most dangerous frame you will ever live inside is one you accepted before you had the language to question it. If you did the audit, or if you know exactly which identity has been running your decisions, name it in the comments. One word is enough. The next video goes one step further, what you replace it with. It's already on this channel, and if this reaches something, subscribe, not for content. For the continuation of this particular conversation. The chains the Stoic breaks are never on his wrists.